Hey everybody, welcome to a very short Piney podcast today. My name is Tony D. Not a lot to report. The big news is, of course, that Governor Phil is now allowing the pro sports teams to get their gear and start practicing and eventually start playing again. I know that's a big draw for a lot of you out there. I know a lot of my coworkers are going to be very excited. It doesn't help certain sports like the NHL. The New Jersey Devils were kind of out of it, and they were on their way to the Stanley Cup, but there are a lot of Flyers fans down here, so I think they're still in the mix. Whether or not, I assume nobody's going to be in the stadium when these guys play, depending on the state they're in. But nothing much else beyond that. Social distancing continues to be a thing. The numbers today, I couldn't get any numbers other than yesterday's numbers. I mean, we're under 1,000. There was an article in the Inquirer saying now we're 19 days in a row below 2,000. I think we're 3 or 4 days below 1,000 new cases. And again, this is spread all over the state. This is not people who are in the hospital. Hospitalizations are down to about 2,800, 2,700, something like that. That's statewide, And sad thing is, it's getting down here towards me in South Jersey and to where my folks are. A lot of their friends either know someone or are someone who unfortunately has the beer virus. One person's on a ventilator, another person's got it, and they've got underlying health conditions. So, it's a scary time for them now. It's kind of hit at home. And I can understand that. And look, if you're in that elderly bracket, 70 and above, you should stay home. You should continue to be very, very careful. That being said, I don't see the point in closing every single store in the state that's non-essential when Walmart and Target and all the big box stores sell everything and are allowed to sell everything. It would be different if they said to Walmart, well, you could only sell essentials, and anything else if you sell, we're going to fine you or whatever. I wouldn't support that, but that would at least be more fair, and then no one could get, greeting cards or non-essential items, whatever they are. But the problem is that term, non-essential. Who is Tyrant Phil Murphy to decide what's essential and not essential? You may say greeting cards are not essential. What if you have an elderly relative who's dying? You can't visit them physically, but you can maybe get them a greeting card, and maybe that means something to them. Maybe that those last moments mean something, reading that greeting card. Maybe that's a thing you had. You can't really use the term essential forever. Essential and non-essential. Things have gone on too long, and the science is in. Murphy continues to hide behind the science while just ignoring the science that doesn't seem to comport with what he wants to do, which is keep the state closed as long as possible. I still contend he's working with the national DNC party to keep New Jersey under lockdown because he and the other Democratic governors think, well, when Biden gets in, he'll just give us a big pile of money and we'll fix everything. But you won't, because people who own small businesses will be out of business, and you won't give that money to them. Let's be honest. You'll do all sorts of programs to help your wonderful political career, and then you'll stand on a podium and say, well, see, wasn't that wonderful? Yes, I completely crushed your business, but I gave you all this free money that helped you survive, kind of. Not really. And it's never enough, when the government calculates stuff, is it really ever enough? And in fact, it's not their money. It's not like they're taking it out of their pocket and handing it to you. They're taking it out of your pocket and handing it back to you. Or they're borrowing it, expecting you to pay it back. So, I don't want to see people sick. I'm still wearing a mask. I'm still social distancing. I'm still in a a window of people that slightly elevated you know case that I could get sick. But that is like a little over 1% for me. That means I have over a 98% chance of survival if I get this. It is most likely that I have gotten it and that I didn't have enough symptoms to even notice. They may test me and, oh, you had it already. You had the antibodies. And I'm like, doing all this stuff for what? Fortunately, I don't have a local business to open or not open. But the idea that Phil Murphy and his cadre of CEOs, who God knows what he's paying them, are going to tell some local gym, well, you can open if you do X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z is already mapped out. We already know what to do, Phil. Open the windows, wipe everything down, wear a mask, social distance. The end. The end. What are you going to add to that? Other than, well, capacity. You're gonna change the capacity of the gym. That's going to change the business model, and people are going to go out of business anyway. You can't, and other states are open. Other states are completely open, and they're not seeing waves and waves of dead people or sick people. They're just not. So how does Phil explain that? How does Phil explain Japan? Japan barely locked down. People did sort of half-assed social distancing, and they did the mask because they do the mask during flu season anyway in Asia. Something that we should probably adopt. That's not a big deal to wear a mask in crowded situations during flu season. And in fact, as one of the YouTubers pointed out, the flu season killed more people in like the 50s, 1 year in the 50s, 1 year in during the LBJ administration. It was over 100,000 deaths from the flu. So we are, kind of approaching that, and the New York Times is like, oh boy, we're approaching that number, or that 100,000. Oh boy, we can't wait to talk about it. It's weird. This has all become about one thing and one thing only: the election in 2020, and it's sad. We have bigger fish to fry, and this is going to be ongoing. And the longer Phil drags his feet, the more likely it is. First off, I think he's done. I think he's done politically. So maybe he doesn't care, or maybe just doesn't see it. Maybe his ego won't allow him to see it. He thinks he can make everybody forget. I don't think you're going to forget that you went out of business and because you were considered too non-essential while all your customers went to the big box stores. I don't think you're going to forget that if you continue to live in New Jersey. There's people who are going to move out of New Jersey. And we're going to be stuck holding the bag here. We're going to be stuck with the higher taxes to pay for what we already want, regular stuff. Phil Murphy now is threatening the federal government with, well, I might have to fire some essential workers if I don't get money from the federal government. Well, whose fault is that, Mr. Budget? Mr. I want to hire another 1,000 contact tracers to start a whole new program? Stop spending money. It's pretty simple. Just stop spending money, Phil. Cut from other areas. I'm sure there's plenty of waste in the state. I'm sure there's plenty of programs we don't need that have things to do with nothing related to the virus. If the virus is number one on your list and everything's about the virus and all the normal crisis things like crime and fires and things like that, what about all those other programs? And you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's plenty of state programs that have to do with plants and animals and architecture and roadside attractions and tax subsidies on farms and all kinds of fat you could cut. Oh, but those would be unpopular and would cost you votes, right? So you're not going to cut them. Instead, it's easier to go to the federal government with your hand out and say, give me money or I'm going to fire EMTs, which we need. Not a good look, Phil. Not a good look.